Hel- Hello and welcome to everyone for our final Paqo Kuna discussion before the next apprenticeship starts tomorrow. And we're here with Melissa, I've got us lead, Zane, author of Inca Mountain Magic, and of course myself. And we have no itinerary today other than to see where the energy leads us. So if you have questions, comments, inspirations, let us know. And we're happy to go wherever the energy flows.
Absolutely. It's my favorite way to roll. However, the energy flows.
Yeah. So let us know. But we're very excited. Tomorrow we're going to be starting on the initiations of the Hot and Carpet. We have Richie saying good morning. Good
Good
morning.
morning,
We're so looking
Richie.
forward to seeing you in person. And
Absolutely.
Chair Bear saying hello. I think she's in
Uh,
Ireland, right? I think
Maryland?
she no Ireland. I think.
Oh, I
I
thought you
think
said
she's over.
I
I think
knew
she's
you,
over
we
the
had
ocean.
discussed her being in Ireland before, and when I thought you said Maryland, I was like, whoa, she's
No,
close.
no, no.
Come on
Yeah, and she
over.
says, yep, yep, she's in Ireland. We have Kathy saying good morning. So we have all of our students checking in, some of our students, I should say. And yeah, but let's see what we'll get into. Is there anything, an inspiration? Ricky says that he's looking forward to seeing, or Richie. There is a Ricky as a student too, and I get Ricky and Richie mixed up all the time. So I apologize. I will probably be doing that through the whole program. And then we have Magic Mike saying good morning. We got the whole
Hello, Mike.
all their whole crew tuning in here.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm real excited to get started. It's always something I'd love to do. This particular tradition of the Hatun Karpai is something very special. It was passed down from Don Benito Correman Vargas, and it just holds a very unique and it's hard for me to even explain. More than anything else, I think it holds the medicine most needed at this time in Western culture to help us move forward and to advance as human beings, to advance our heart. It's not about the mind; it's really about the heart. We in the Western culture have pushed the mind as far as it pretty much can go. We have pushed it, that mental state. And look at the things we've done. This miracle that we're talking on, this virtual reality, the kind of journey work that we do right here over a computer, that is all because of technology. But we are really at the point in our history where our technology has far surpassed our humanity. But I don't even like to call it our humanity, but our heart. And really, I think for the future, for the new technologies to come up where they're not just reiterations of what we already have, we need to develop that heart filled to its fullest capacity because that will give us a brand new way of approaching reality, which gives us brand new options for when we're programming our technology. And as we become more in tune with that heart field and the way it operates, because it's a little mini brain. A lot of people don't always realize that. But in the heart, back in the 90s, there was some studies done, and they found that there were nerve clusters in the heart, certain types of nerve cells that are only found in the brain. And they wondered, what are these doing here? Why do we have these? About 40,000. And they named them sensory neurites. And what we've discovered since then just echoes the indigenous masters of the past from every tradition, pretty much. And that is that we're not trying to view the world from here. Here's a beautiful tool for emergencies and for learning things. But really, when we go to apply them and when we go to being in this moment, it's all about the heart field. And it's about teaching that heart field to lead the biological brain. Right now, most of us in the Western culture, we lead by our intellect, and our heart, if we touch it at all, is something that is secondary, or as my teachers would say, it's the third thing on the list, usually for the Western culture, is the heart field. And to understand that heart is not just emotions. It's not just that. We ascribe emotions to the heart, but in our tradition, we actually see the emotions as being more in the navel, more even down lower than the heart, the lower part of the Munai center, where the upper part of the heart center is an open capacity, a spaciousness that is our internal temple. And for all those that will be joining us tomorrow, we're starting the work of building the internal spiritual temple, something that in Quechua we call the Manco Wasi, named after Manco Capac, the first Inca. And basically, we're building a royal temple, and it takes all kinds of beautiful blocks that are illustrated beautifully in our chacana, which is our cross, in the Inca cross. And we'll be using that. I won't always say, hey, this is this step in the cross or that step in the cross, but we will be using that as a way, as a teaching model to help people to develop and grow, because each of those little corners in that cross represent one of the blocks needed to create this internal temple of service. So I'm so excited.
I love it. I love it. And we just had a couple other people tuning in saying good morning. We had Joyce saying good morning, and a single cat lady from Iowa saying hello. All kinds of people.
Awesome.
Cool. Cool. Well, let us know what questions you have, because we don't have an itinerary. We're kind of, this is like the lull before the energetic, I don't know, transition thing that we're going to be starting tomorrow. So I feel kind of like it's nice, the calm before the, not a storm per se, but yeah, the calm before the all the good transformation that's going to be happening.
Yeah, you could call it the calm before the storm, because a storm always has that moment afterward, right? That moment when the sun comes back out and there's just all that extra oxygen and all of the elements can come out, and then we can get a rainbow. And how cool is that? So it is the calm before the storm. And then at the end, we're going to have that beautiful rainbow as we join together our energies, our uniqueness, because this is not just a tradition of strict adherence to Andean philosophy or Andean thought. This is actually something that my teachers, my indigenous masters, saw as a birthright of humanity, as sort of like a spiritual practice, like people view Buddhism, that it's a practice that can enrich whatever spiritual path you're already on. And so it's about bringing that together at this time, because we're at a unique epoch in history. We just had these eclipses. We're just moving forward. We finished that one piece of work from like the Mayan calendar, for those that are into that started in about 2012 and lasted to 2021. And it's interesting that that's when the COVID thing started to really lift up. And it was in 2021, as if that was an ending point, something to teach us about our own humanity and where we're falling short in our communities and in our presence with one another.
Melissa, is there anything in particular you're looking forward to most for the start of our next run?
Just the whole, I always appreciate and look forward to the in-person, because it's different every single time. And it's been a few years since I've, been able to sit with Zane in person for the apprenticeship and be in that energetic space. So, that's just kind of what I'm looking forward to, I should say. And Zane, if you stop into the store beforehand, I know a few of the employees would like to meet you and ask questions, because I had recently moved my whole mesa up to the store for some employee work. And so they were asking questions. By the end of it, they're like, well, how do we join in? I'm like, I can't have my whole staff like at the apprenticeship. So I'm sure they, would like to meet and talk with you at some point. But yeah, just the whole experience and like a recharge. Because for me, I always figure the in-person, and it feels like a recharge of me as stepping back into it. Kind of every year, I'm like, I know I sat in this apprenticeship before. How did I miss this? Or where, for instance, for the longest time, I thought it was only one Kintu inside the Misha. And at some point, a couple of years down the road, re-listening, and it's one for every piece. And I'm like, I know I sat there. How did I miss? It was one for every piece, not one for the collective of the pieces. So it's always eye-opening and a reintroduction into what I may have forgotten or missed, or kid in the candy store for me.
Yeah, I can't wait either. I'm so happy to be sharing this time with both of you because it's been a while. You know, COVID really threw us out of whack. We were doing these once a year, and you know, they were all pretty much live with a couple online classes here and there. And then you know, the pandemic hit, and we had to move everything to the online platform. And that was kind of a beautiful thing because it showed some qualities that only the online type of thing can create, some potentials where people can go a little deeper into certain teachings than are able to happen in one live weekend. You know, one of the sad things about just doing the live alone is that there's so much information that people get drowned in the information sometimes, and they don't really, and that can keep people from connecting fully with what they're being taught because they think, well, I missed this word, or I don't know what that word means, and now I'm stuck in, you know, now I don't think I can do this until I know exactly what that word means, or this process. And it really is something beautiful. Like you said, year after year, and I've sat years and years with my teachers as well, and I had the same type of experience. Oh yeah, something new, something that I just picked up this time, and that's part of the whole thing. That's why it's a family. We call it IU, you know, a family, because we're really building and growing with each other. And what people bring to the table, the experiences they have, the healings that they need, really stare a lot of what is taught and a lot of the apprenticeship. There's an underlying foundation that's the same every year, and it will always be there because that's the process. That's how the process works. But it takes years, sometimes decades, before you understand that process, before you know how to approach that process completely. And that's why it's so beneficial for people to sit in more than 1 year, because you will get more. But it's always by listening to your heart. You know, is this for me? Is this for me now? You know, and just allowing yourself to honor whatever your heart says.
That's the big thing is like listening to the heart and then not letting the head talk you out of what your heart is telling you.
Yeah, yeah, it can be hard because we try to make all of our decisions up here. You know, we try to put out logical facts and look at them and explore things from all these logical angles, and that's a beautiful thing. I'm not saying that that isn't something that humans need to do, but often, especially when it comes to sacredness, the sacred experience does not happen here. The mind is the biggest obstacle to the sacred experience. Doesn't matter how much philosophy you learn and all this other stuff. In fact, oftentimes learning complex metaphysics and philosophy will keep you from the spiritual experience because it puts all these blinders on you. It gives you all of these little bits of candy, you know, that your mind that wake up the mind instead of letting it go into a slumber. Because we don't enter the spiritual experience in that high vibratory state of the mind. We enter it when we start to drop down into the body, into the heart. The heart creates the space for the experience to happen. The mind is used later, after the experience, you know, and I tell all of you that are going to be in the apprenticeship, you'll hear me say this during it many times. The mind, the analytical mind has a purpose, but it's for after the experience is over, after you've had your experience and you've come back from it, not while you're coming back either, but after you've had it and you've come back from it and you've had some time to be away from it, maybe a day or something, then allowing the analytical mind to start looking at it like a jigsaw puzzle, looking at it for hidden nuggets, little bits of information. One of the other things that we do in the West a lot of times is we'll get a download during something and we'll be like, oh, and we'll focus all of our mind on that download, making it so important that we pull ourselves out of the experience to kind of tease apart whatever we experienced. Where it's better if you let the whole experience come to a natural end. If you go in and you might be like, oh, I'm afraid I'll forget this, I have to write it down. Well, you know, especially some of my teachers, what they would say is if you would forget it before you had time to write it down, don't worry about it yet. It's still cooking. It's not a done meal. Once it's completely done, it was maybe a teaser of something to come. And you'll remember it in the right moment when you're in a spiritual experience again. Then you'll remember it, and then you'll have a better understanding of it. And when it's time for it to stick, it will stick, and you'll remember it an hour later to write it down in your journal, to make a note of it somehow.
I love that idea. I wish I had that sooner. But you always have it in the right divine timing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and especially my Quechua teachers, originally Quechua was not a written language at all. It was through the textiles that they would tell the stories. It was through the textiles that they would remember the information. You weren't writing it all down. If you needed something and you needed to remember it tomorrow, you put it in a kuya, you put it in a stone, and then you let that stone remind you of it. And once again, that makes you go into your heart, because it's not the intellect of remembering where you got the stone. That plays a small portion of it, but just picking up the stone and drinking in its energy, and you start to remember. And remembering, especially things like that, doesn't mean you remember it word for word, or you remember it like a picture from a past thing. It means that you might get a brand new download of that old information. So you might hold that stone and suddenly you get an elevated download of what you learned when you put that in that stone. And maybe you don't remember where you were and you don't remember what teaching was being taught to you, but holding that stone, you start to merge with it, and the information just comes forward. The information will come forward. I have had stones before that I've wondered, where did I even pick this up? Where did this stone come from? And if I don't remember where it came from and I'm not remembering anything, do I still need it? And so I'll hold it and I'll read its medicine. And then I'll know, is it time to return it to nature so that someone else will pick it up someday and it will be already encoded with all that information? Or is it something that I'm still learning and I'm still developing and I'm still ready to carry in this life?
Yeah. We did have Karen saying that you're such a blessing and thank you for your wisdom.
Oh,
At some point, somebody had a mind blowing moment for something that you were saying and just some agreement of what you were talking about. And when you're talking about the stories and the medicine in the stone, was it in your class that I remember there was something about knots and the story was tied into a knot?
Yeah. So those are called kepe. And there's no more kepe nioks. The last person that knew how to read them was Don Manuel Quespi. And he died about 2005, I believe it was. And for the last 10, 15 years, if you went to him and asked him how you read the kepes, he didn't know anymore. He had forgotten too. But yeah, so the ancient Inca, they recorded historical events and especially taxes, because taxes are very important to an empire. And taxes there, of course, they didn't have a token economy. So taxes were textiles. They were potato seeds. It could be corn seed or corn, feed corn, or it could be work that you went out and did for the empire, like building roads or rebuilding a village that just got flooded and washed away. So those were your taxes. And those taxes were kept on these knotted cords that were often a bunch of cords, and they were wrapped in like a spiral shape. And it would kind of remind you of the Milky Way galaxy. And they would paint the knots different colors to remind them, oh, this is a debt, or this is a story of a historical event. And the way the knot was tied, also, where it was tied in the cord, the way it was tied, the color of it, all that gave you hints to what the information was contained within that kepe cord. But it took the reader, someone who could see, to hold it and then to go into it, and not just with the rudimentary information that was there, the knot type, the color of it, where it's at on the cord, but also with their disciplined imagination, allowing that to come into their heart and their disciplined imagination to decode what the information was so they could tell a story. so that they could say, oh, you still owe this much in taxes. So they knew what was going on. That was really the two ways that information was remembered, was in the textiles and in those kepes that were tied knots of string.
That's good. I'm glad I remembered it right.
Yeah, those are, and of course, some of it was actually built into the temples themselves. There's a language there, much like the Templars of medieval Europe learned a language, and we believe they learned that language most likely from being in the old Temple Mount, because the Knight Templar, they were called the Knights of the Temple because they actually lived inside of the desecrated temple in Jerusalem. And they were doing all kinds of mining and stuff in the ruins underneath of it. And they learned a way of building buildings where the blocks themselves can tell a story. Now, similar to that, the Inca also did that. And that's why if you go to Sacsayhuaman, you might think, oh, it's just an assortment of big stones and little stones, and it doesn't really mean anything. But then if you look again, and you just are a little more observant, one thing you're going to find is that those stones make figures, especially llama motifs. You'll find it over and over again, a llama. A few feet later, a llama made out of stone again, but you have to have the right eyes to look at it. Or you might see something like a jaguar there. And it's to tell you information about what that area of the temple was used for, all kinds of different information. And another very interesting thing that we found in stonework of the Inca is that some of their stonework resembles the patterning of mamacera, which is the mother corn from Peru, the patterning on an ear of corn, and that they sometimes laid blocks that looked just like rows of corn on an ear of corn. And one of the beautiful things about the way they built these buildings was that they were seismic proof. There was a lot of earthquakes, especially back during the Inca Empire. And if you just laid one solid same shaped block on top of another and just built walls that way, just like here in North America, when we have an earthquake, those walls just fall. They just crumble because there's no give or take. And they built all these things without mortar. So there was no pressure. There was no something sticking them together. So it's very interesting how they discovered this and how they put a living language into it, the language of stone itself, into these monuments. And it just continues to amaze me to this day.
Melissa, was there something, I thought you were about to say something, and then there was another run of
Sorry about
information.
No, I was going to say, kind of circling back about, being in front of too much knowledge into the spirit. Richie made the comment. I was telling Melissa after our live yesterday that I definitely need to learn to get out of my head because it's blocking me from my gifts. So he was just kind of validating that. It was a conversation that we had yesterday. So it's kind of like some reinforcement happening there.
I think
absolutely.
That speaks a bit to like how Melissa shared the one time she had her experience, but then when she heard other people talking, she thought she did it wrong. Because one of the things when it comes to developing our gifts is our mind is comparing what we're thinking we should be experiencing to what somebody else experienced. And I think we kind of can get lost with that when we're looking at what other people.
Yeah, and that's the mind doing what it's supposed to do. And that's one of the reasons why the mind is not useful in a spiritual experience. The mind, as we understand it, the analytical, processing mind isn't useful during the spiritual experience because it's a negation machine. Its job is to say no. Its job is to look at similarities and say, is it the same? Is it different? Is it us? Is it them? Is it danger? Is it safety? And it does that with everything. And that's its job. It does it with anything you put in front of it. You're running a Reiki and it feels different. Your mind, if you don't know how to quiet the mind or basically how to step away from it, it might tell you, hey, you're not doing it right because it's not feeling the way it felt the last time you did it or the way it felt when you got attuned. And that's all this mental game that goes on inside of us, is that the mind has to compare everything. That's its big job. That's what it does. And through those comparisons, it creates a model of reality. And that model of reality is an illusion. It's not the reality that we all live in, but it's the way our mind decodes the reality we live in and how it puts things into perspective within its model, within what it believes to be true.
Yeah. We just had Judy just kind of resonating with Richie and agreeing with what he had said, and that Christine was offering that the mind is like a sorting machine, like an abacus.
It is, yeah. Yeah, it sorts experiences, but that's the whole thing with the spiritual experience. We don't need to be sorting it while it's going on. That takes, that analytical mind is not a very efficient processor. It takes a lot of energy to just work with 8 or 9 bits of information. The intuitive mind, which is kind of connected, especially when we get into our body senses, it can decode humongous amounts of information. So it's really about how we're moving our way of processing from what we would see as the head brain understanding into a different center, so that we can experience it in more fullness. And then, like I said, using the analytical mind afterward to decode it, because it's great at that. That's what it does. And that's why it's so slow and why it takes so much energy, because it brings up 2 contrary points and it looks at it and says, is there any connection between them? And where are those connections and what are they? And it just goes down this rabbit hole, and that takes a lot of crunching power. But in our spiritual experiences, in our spiritual work, and in our healings, those of you who are healers, you don't need any of that. In fact, it will just keep you from being in the proper space to do your work. It will pop up from time to time. That's the beauty of it. The beauty is learning how to deal with it when it does pop up, and how to work with that mind, because it's one of our greatest tools in this reality, but we need to put it in its proper place. We need to use it when it's applicable to the situation we're working on.
And Christine was offering from that's why that they're glad that they've been working with the Nawis. Each of the 5 points offered different options.
Absolutely, yeah. The Nawis are little mini brains. It's like each one of those is a mini brain. And if we look at it from a biochemical biology standpoint, we will see that the Nawis, each one of them, is in a place where there is a glandular system and a nerve plexus. So it's a digital analog mixture thing. The glands are like analog. The nerve plexus itself is like a digital signal. And they merge together to create our reality. Each one is a little brain through our body. And each one has a different frequency vibration. It's not that there's one that you should always be in. You should be able, it's best if you are able to move to the one that is most applicable to the moment in time that you're living in, to the information that's coming in. And that's something that we learn, is how to jump up and move between these processors, so that we can meet reality where reality is, not where we fantasize it should be.
So let us know what your thoughts are, guys, what you think.
Yeah, this has been good so far. We've had a lot of comments come in, and a lot of that's great.
What other questions you have, and especially Melissa, I know you. I don't know what time you had to hop off, but if there's any other. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I make sure my typing doesn't overtake on the back end. But yeah, I need to hop off and make sure my do not disturb is turned back off for the phone call. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. I can't believe it's already here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And we're going to be doing this every month coming up. This is going to be so cool. And I'm so excited to get to spend some time with both you guys. You know, this is just really a wonderful thing. Thank you so much for the work that you both have put into this. I really want you both to know I truly appreciate it. And just helping to get the word out about these programs and the change that they're capable of producing in people's lives. Thank you so much.
You're really welcome, and thanks, Melissa. And we may take a break next week. At least Melissa for sure, because she's been doing so many live streams. Like this is just one, but she's doing like 10 a week or something insane. I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but Melissa will probably. She's doing a lot of live streams, so there may be a little bit of a break now that the apprenticeship is going to be running. But what we also will be looking to do is, for those not joining us for the apprenticeship, what little things do we offer with Zane? Maybe a Disucssion class or some other sort of thing where you could get a little taste of Zane in person, but not necessarily diving all the way into an apprenticeship. So we'll see what we can create with them.
Yeah, I'm totally open to that. I love to present the information of this tradition in a way that people can take it home. Because that's really what it's about, is taking it home and applying it to your life. Applying it, and a Disucssion class would be a great thing to do, because a lot can be taught in the Disucssion. And then especially if you go home and you try to make your own Disucssion, that's beautiful. And it's one of the ways we learn Aini. The Disucssion is considered the Hatin Aini Yachak, or the great teacher of Aini,
Yeah. But thank you, Melissa. We'll catch you when we catch you.
See you tomorrow, Melissa.
Bye. Yeah, we'll definitely see you tomorrow. And we'll see you online at some point too. Bye, Melissa. All right. And we were just having some people talk about the program, saying that they wish they lived closer. Well, where do you live, Christine? Maybe we can create something close to you. I know we were not joking about creating something in Ireland and heading out to be able to do something across the pond. And then Richie was just thanking Melissa for getting him here to the point where he's joining us for the program.
Awesome. Yeah. And this is a big program and a special program. But later in this year, we're going to be offering some online apprenticeships too, that are just purely online. They're different though, because you're not going to receive what we do in person. There's certain rituals and exercises that can only be transferred from bubble to bubble, only transferred in that personal space, and certain teachings that can only be done that way. But there will be an online apprenticeship, which, if you feel called to this tradition, keep watching, because that's going to be coming up soon. And that's another opportunity to learn. And yeah, we are always looking for opportunities to go to other places, because my work isn't just about teaching people. My work has to do with the nature spirits. My masters called me to help awaken the nature spirits of North America, to help bring them into alignment with this energy that's coming in. We see coming in to the mountain of Pachatusan is one of the mountains. And then there's a big mountain in Colombia also. And these hold certain informational codes. They're axis mundis, or they're universal points of energy. And as the codes come into those mountains, they're distributed throughout these mountain systems. And so a big part of my work is doing this work in different nature environments. And of course, being my home being in Appalachia, of course, that's been central to the work that I do. And I do, and we're in talks about doing a big, what we do is a 6-day week. 6 or 7 days up in the mountains of West Virginia. Really, it's the mountains of Virginia, West Virginia, and Maryland. We're bouncing all around that area. But it's a very powerful energetic vortex there. And that vortex, just to give you an idea, some of those mountains have these windmills on them. And these windmills are producing power. And guess where that power goes? Washington, D.C. So as we are doing energy work in those mountains, and we're raising the vibration of those mountains, it actually has a trickle-down effect that is flowing into DC, because DC is along those same energy lines. The Potomac River runs through there. And so as we're doing this work, we're lifting up that entire energy grid. That's really some of the work that we're doing there. And I love doing it there. I've been doing it there, oh my gosh, how many years? In those particular mountains right there, 19 years or something like that. I can't do the math right now in my head, but just working with those mountains. And of course, didn't happen every single year, There's sometimes times where nothing happens there for 3 to 5 years. Well, not never 5 years, but 3 years or so before I get to go back there and do stuff. But we've been doing one yearly for the last few years.
Yeah. And I will say that the last time we did the retreat last year over the summer solstice, it was like I've done the hot tongue carpi. I'm probably in double digits at this point. I don't know how many times, but there was this moment at one part where something new clicked for me on a whole different level. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
and just doing things at the different nature spots, I think just bring different qualities. So I'm a big advocate. Go through the things as much as you can. And there's one thing that's beautiful about using the same spots, but like I know we did a private hot tongue carapai for a group not too long ago, and you picked some of the places because the land needed it, and it may have been the first time they ever experienced
Yeah.
some sort of the ceremonies, and that kind of leads into this question that Kathy was saying about talking about the nature spirits. How much of an effect do they have on a spiritual pull to a specific place? Do they have, and how? Like my question, expanding on that, is when you're choosing a spot, how much of it is for the quality of the energy and maybe the repetition of having things there over and over again, and how much of a pull might be for the healing of the land or something new?
Yeah. So one thing is that we're called to areas, and oftentimes people don't understand that. Even if you get a job in a new area, usually it is the nature beings that are kind of orchestrating that for you. They're kind of putting that together because you need to bring the energy from the nature spirits you are at to that place. And maybe it's only a temporary thing. Maybe you thought, oh, this new job is going to be a permanent job. And you're there 2 or 3 years, and then you realize it's not right anymore. And then you come back home. You come back to where you originally lived. Now, some people look at that and think, oh, man, I failed, or, oh, man, this didn't work out. This was not a successful thing. But really what it is you've learned the lessons you needed to learn in that new place. And now you're bringing an energy cord back with you to the place that you originally lived, because there needed to be that energy. A few years ago, I moved out to California. Now, I had been traveling out there a couple times, every couple months or so, I had been traveling out there. And in between that, I had been traveling to New York City. Now, this is an interesting occurrence because I realized when I was moving out there, one of the things I realized was I wasn't exactly being a go-between for the energy of Ohio to California. I was really being called at that time. I was just running back and forth between DC, California, and New York City, and I was just bouncing back and forth. And so what I was doing was I was creating these well-worn paths of energy back and forth, and also to New Jersey, to those coasts, kind of bridging those coasts. And of course, I'm not the only one. Everyone who travels from one to the other is doing this, but I was doing it in a conscious way where I understood that there was something of that New York energy, and it was a very particular energy of New York. It wasn't just any New York. It was a very particular energy of New York. And I was planting it out there in this mountain range, this Ortega mountain range. And I was bringing that Papa energy of the Ortega mountain range, and I was bringing that back across, creating this golden belt across the United States. And I understood that I was doing that. And like I said, not the only one. Every business person, even if they're completely spiritually dense, that's traveling between those two places, is in a sense bringing the energy back and forth. So we are called by the nature spirits, and they have a very strong pull. They have the pull where they could bring your mother and father, especially your mother, to the right place for you to be born. It can initiate circumstances that get you to the place you need to be born, because we believe that the place you're born, not necessarily the place you grow up, but the place you are physically born, even if you only spend an hour there your entire life, and then were moved to another hospital, and then from there went home to a whole other region, and your family, and you never went back to that spot you were born. That spot has a unique energy quality, because those are the nature beings that decided to be your guides in this life and bring you. They fashioned out of the Akashic records, if you will, out of the very records of the earth, all of the spiritual energy and knowledge, and they wove together a field of space that we see as the soul. not the spirit. We in this tradition have a spirit and a soul, and they're not the same thing. But it wove together this thing that has all the information and all the potential to help you move forward on your soul's progress in this life. And they fashioned it, and you had to be born within their energetic grid to receive that. And it doesn't matter if you were born too early and had to be born at a hospital that you weren't supposed to be born at. Guess what? You were supposed to be born there. You were supposed to be born because you had to be close in the energetic grid work of these two nature beings who are your nature mom and dad, for your spirit to be able to live this soul life and to have all of the necessary potentiality to accomplish your soul's mission. And potentiality is an interesting thing because it doesn't mean you will ever do it. Potentiality, it just means that it's programmed in there if you do the work. If you do the work and you really push yourself that direction, you may be able to accomplish all those things. So that's very important. Now, the second part of the question that Hank added to that was, how do we select the nature sites? Well, there's certain criteria, of course, certain types of power spots we're looking to work with that are related to certain types of energetic qualities. But especially that little Hatankarpai we did last fall with that group, what I was called to look for mostly completely. There was a couple spots we always use, but mostly brand new spots that called out to me to be used. And, just look, sometimes it's as easy as looking at a map of an area. Sometimes, especially with the internet, it becomes a lot easier because you can kind of go to places before you actually go there, and you can kind of sense their energy and get a quality for them. But there were some particular places like that, that overhang that we worked with.
Yep.
That place was calling, and it really wanted this work to be done there as a way of acknowledging the ancient inhabitants of that area, the ancestral quality there, and to help reestablish a grid work between some sacred sites and that spot to kind of awaken, if you would, a spiritual city that used to live there that has all kinds of information that is now is being fed back through those seke systems throughout our continent and all the way back down to South America, because it's not just about the sacred energy of South America and bringing it here. No, that would be a one-sided relationship, and we don't do that. Where every relationship we have is one of mutual respect and one of Aini, which means both is giving more than it gets and both is receiving more than it gave. And in that way, I know that's kind of paradoxical, but it's really what we need at this time, is that for South America to continue to grow, for the world to continue to grow, we need these nature beings in communication with each other and sharing their sacred energy, because sacredness isn't in one spot. Sure, we have certain wakas, we call them in the tradition, but we have certain spots that are extremely sacred, maybe a vortex at Sedona and things like that. But we have other spots that are very beautiful and sacred as well. And some of them have been purposefully turned off by humanity, because Mother Nature gave humanity this ability to slow down her energy centers. We use the word nawis, but to use a word that's more familiar, it's like Earth's chakras. And some of them have been purposefully turned off by the inhabitants, by the human beings. And now we are starting this work of reawakening these earth centers so that they are flowing energy in a unique pattern again, in a unique grid work pattern. And that grid work, and just if you could imagine it like a web, just the pattern that web makes creates certain information downloads and allows certain things to be accomplished. And that's just a beautiful quality of all this.
Yeah, a couple things. One, we had Christine just sharing that that's why she spent 8 months in Chicago. Like, there was just an energy quality that she had to do that. And Ricky is looking forward to all the self-discovery and the aha moments. But as you were talking about Aini and that definition of put into it more than you take out. so many people are doing the opposite. Like I remember Param, he would say that corporate efficiency is how do I get the most out of this person and put the least into them. It's like the opposite of
Yeah,
Heidi.
that's another quality we call chaya, and that's the quality of the lower world, where they haven't learned Aini yet, which is a higher quality of exchange. And that's just like saying, hey, you want to buy this stone. You can't buy it. It's not for sale. But you want to buy this stone. I say it's this amount of money. The energy exchange happens when you give me that amount of money and I give you the stone. And then it's over. That's the entire exchange. And the energy between us ends at that moment. That's this lower vibrational quality. But the higher vibrational quality of Aini is a continuous relationship of energy. It's when something is given and it continues to give. It continues to give forever. And what you give back continues to flow forever. And for your own personal perspective, you will always get more than you give, even though you're trying to give back as much as you give. The universe, the law of Aini says if it's in Aini, you will always get back more than you give. But you will always be you'll always be in debt trying to give back. And it's not like the Western concept of debt. And I want to, debt in the Western concept is like death. You owe this and you're going to be hurt in a sense if you don't pay it. Yeah, there's legal things that could happen, all kinds of other things that could happen. It's not like that. It's like a divine credit system where your credit rating, the more you give, the higher your credit rating goes, but you're always in debt to all of these beings. You're in debt to your teachers. You're in debt to the spirits of the tradition, the lineage. You're in debt to the nature beings, but they're in debt to you. It's a mutual debt, and you're always giving and taking, even when you don't know it's happening. Even when I don't know, I performed something for someone, and I feel like I've done it of my own personal power, that I do understand that my personal power is made from my relationships with the natural world.
Yeah. Oh, it just went out of my head. Come back. Oh, the two things were it's kind of the difference between recognizing you're in service to all of creation versus being in servitude. Like one has like a victim mentality and one is like it's just the nature of things to walk hand in hand with the spirit of the universe to continue to create greater and greater and greater. And it's about expanding creation at that point. And in 1997, I was in Alaska and I bought my first little journal and I had written down in there. And one of my first 3 laws to live by was into all relationships, always put in more than you take out. And I find it validating in a way that that kind of was Aini before I even knew what shamanism was or what Peru was about. And one example of what I feel a good example of Aini of how it kind of works is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That started, it was about service and everything else. And like you go into the program and that program helps you and then you go help 10 other people. And those 10 people go help 10 other people. And look at AA without any real donations, or it's all just like $1 at a meeting, people throwing it into a little basket. What was created from one person just giving a little bit more than they receive from something. And look what blossomed and bloomed out of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a universal law. If you really realize it, the entire universe gave you so much for you to have this opportunity at life. It gave you these ancestral lines, and these people had to survive to a certain point in each generation so your ancestors could be born so that you could receive that genetic information. There had to be those nature spirits involved so that you received that energetic information. And then there had to be the spirit involved, and everything had to align, and it all has to align within a field of free will because nothing is forced. Sure, it's not your free will for a tornado to come through your neighborhood. That's not your free will, but your free will is how you react to that. So everything is within a field of free will. And for everything acting in its own free will to align for you to even have been born, for you to even be here this moment, for you to have just tuned in somehow to receive this message, that is the entire universe conspiring on your behalf. And for that to even be orchestrated, it's not possible on a logical level. I cannot think of one computer algorithm that could ever make that happen. And logic just couldn't do it, because logic would have to override free will, and it just wouldn't be able to be done. But within this, and everyone just choosing what they feel truly in their heart to choose at every single moment, always puts us in the right spot for that moment. Sure, you might say, well, I suddenly ended up in a dangerous spot. Well, that tells you a whole lot about the choices you made. That tells you a whole lot about how you've been living your life. And it's not to say that you can ever, no amount of spiritual progress completely protects you from any kind of misfortune happening to you. Some misfortunes will happen in life. That's just part of the whole thing. But we can actually fortify ourselves, and we can learn to make better decisions, because every decision, every act of free will puts you in the perfect space for that act of free will, for you to continue your growth at that moment. Eventually, we get the power of the Kawak. And the power of the Kawak, we call it vision, but it has nothing to do with like seeing things as we think. It's about seeing flows of energy and where they're heading. And as we develop that quality inside of ourselves, we can just start to intuitively put ourselves into the right free will decision that leads us closer to a destination we would like to get to. We may not be able to hit that pinpoint. It's like surfing. You might not be able to hit exactly one spot on the beach, especially when you're first learning, but you will learn how to get closer and closer to that spot as you practice. And that's just a beautiful thing, that we can have this foresight and this vision. We can develop this vision that helps us understand where we're heading.
And when you use the word misfortune, like the word that I like to use is when things happen, and it's not a preferred thing. It's contrast for the soul to know itself. Without whatever that misfortune is, if that misfortune didn't occur, it wouldn't give you the same perspective to have an appreciation for something later down the line. So it's really contrast for the soul, or the trauma and drama that makes the pearl of wisdom that you get to share, and that type of thing. Judy did make a comment kind of talking about moving around again, that thanks for reframing about moving around in service to the nature spirits, or just to connect with the nature spirits. Even if it's not part of our conscious awareness, this helps me heal a bit from the short time she lived in New Mexico.
Yeah, there's always something that we're learning, and more often than not, if you're being invited there, even by friends, and understand this, if I invite you to my area of Ohio to stay with me or something, in some sense, the nature beings are also doing that, because I'm a representative. Every human in every community is a representative of the nature spirits of that area. And that's why people are similar. Of course, we're all shades of the color, or all colors of the rainbow, I should say, and all of these things. And there can be a dynamic difference between people in an area. But if you really start to look at it, you'll notice that people who live in an area for a while, they develop certain similar characteristics to each other. They might be different religions from different cultures, celebrate different holidays, but they get a similar way of looking at reality, a very similar approach to the reality we see. And that's just something very beautiful. And when we look at things that way, we can take some of the human pressure off. Some of the human pressure to know that we might not be, just because you're called to a place doesn't mean you're staying there the rest of your life, and just because you find yourself working someplace like Texas doesn't mean that you're always going to be in Texas, especially if you're like, I don't even like Texas. Why do I feel like I got to be there right now? This helps us to understand that quality and what may be going on, and I shouldn't say may, what is going on one level of reality.
We had Christine just offering that she loves us, and amazing hearing you and I together. And also Melissa, she had to drop off, but I love getting Melissa's take on things. It's, she has a very different perspective, and that's why her and I are a Yanantan in some respects, because of the different way we approach things. Absolutely. And then we had Emerald Raven saying that I was always told that it's not the situation, it's how you react to the situation and learn from the situation. And that's a perfect segue, because I had this thought, and it was completely going a different direction with our conversation, speaking to the difference between reacting and responding, and sometimes like how we might get blindsided by something and we really, take action and then afterwards go, wow, I really went over the top. But sometimes that's a required medicine in that sense. But just speaking a little bit to reacting, responding, and maybe the variation and differences between the two.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, of course, in the English language, they're the same word basically. Responding and reacting are the same exact definition in a sense, but we can draw a distinction there, and whenever we're drawing this distinction, we need to define it so people understand because those words are used interchangeably. So when we're using those words, especially when we're talking about responding, we're talking about doing it from a place of greater awareness. So reactions, we all have these things that I call root experiences that happen in our lives. And these root experiences are kind of like traumas. It could be that you're not accepted by someone. It could be that you were physically received abuse from someone. But these traumas kind of color the way we look at reality. And when we have those traumas, these root experiences, they are a root of something that we, in this tradition and many other traditions, call an imprint. And an imprint can almost be seen as the blooming flower of a trauma in your energy field. It creates a unique architecture, architecture of light. And that architecture of light is kind of like, I always call it like a stained glass window, because it filters all the information you bring in, and it filters all of your light that you shine out into the reality. So it changes the way that the information comes in. The highest divine message coming to you has to come through the filter of your imprints, because you've put them there to protect you and to filter information. And that's why you might not be able to receive all the information in a download that was given to you, because you can only receive what your imprint will allow through. It will filter some of the light out. And likewise, the light that you're shining into the world, you may be shining the most beautiful light, but it can only shine through the stained glass of your soul back out into reality. And that tells people how to experience what you're offering, how to see the light that you shine. So it's like a two-way mirror almost of experience there. And you know what? I forgot what the question was. I just realized I'm in the middle of saying something and I'm not sure what I'm responding to.
Well, the question was, bring up the question or the statement. It was like she was always told that it's a situation and it's how you react to the situation. Not,
oh, yes. Now I remember reacting and responding.
Right. And they're really the same term, but one is inferred the way we use it as respond or taking an action with greater awareness than more conscious than unconscious, perhaps would be the.
When we say reacting, oftentimes what we're saying is an imprint's been triggered. That's why I was talking about the imprints now. Yep, so someone does something and it reminds us of our dad when he ignored us. Okay. So that triggers that imprint. So yeah, you're going to react to that person the way you want to react to your dad. Especially if they're not your dad and they're not quite in that level of authority over you, you might start to react with all of the built up energy you have about your dad never listening to you or ignoring you or neglecting you. And so now you're throwing that whole wallop of energy at this situation or person. And you're doing it kind of unconsciously because in a sense, your conscious awareness has gone from the present moment and has fallen into the imprint's snare. It's been activated in you, and now you're reacting from the past, not to the person who's in front of you and the information they're giving you, but you're reacting from a past wound. And oftentimes there's a level of unconsciousness that happens during that, where you're almost reacting robotically, and you barely notice what you're doing until later, if you remember it at all. And that's what we mean by reacting. Responding is when you can sense that and you can actually feel your imprint being triggered and you can be an observer of the experience and you can watch yourself and eventually you can step in there and say, I want to react this way, but instead I know better to respond this way. And that takes a bit of awareness to be able to do it. And we don't do it perfectly every single time an imprint's triggered. But every time an imprint's triggered and you are aware of it, and you're aware of the entire script, there's like a whole narrative script that will come into your head and your emotions, and you'll go right into that. And if you can become aware of that, that's step one. And that's monumental. That is one of the biggest steps in spiritual development, is to be able to create an observer that's outside of your own mind, that's outside of the situation, and that can communicate with you what's happening right then. And then for you to actually step into that position of the observer, that's the next step. And then for that observer to have control of the body while all this imprint is being triggered. That's healing the imprint. And it doesn't matter if the imprint's still there to be triggered. Now it's been healed, where you can observe the triggering, where you can observe the reactionary behavior you want to do, and where you can tame your passions to the point where you can choose how you're going to respond. And that's where we put respond in instead of react, because responding has a little bit more of a cooperative quality to the language. It has, to its language roots, there's more of a cooperative thing, where reacting is more something you just do. Responding says that there is a back and forth, a parlay of information is going on. Reacting says I'm throwing something, I'm making an action. So that's really how I basically define those and the differences between them.
Well, I've had a lot of practice in this area, especially with my one son. Because kids, they do have the tendency to, but I've done a lot different, where I can actually say to Anya, even like, I feel impulse to do this, but I'm not choosing that. I'm going to go choose this instead. And so I feel like I'm in the midst of some of those for myself, being able to heal those types of things. Judy was just saying this is extremely important stuff. I'm happy you're able to receive that. And Kathy is saying healing imprints is going to be crucial for me, to be sure. And for me, I like saying I've learned to navigate it. Because like you said, like I can still feel, okay, this is triggering, and maybe I'm seeing in Oliver something my brother might have done, and I wish my parents would have done a certain thing a certain way, and I'm now being that certain thing a certain way, but that wasn't necessarily a healthy certain way,
Yeah.
But I can catch myself more and more, but then I still have work to do. Got it.
Well, here's the whole thing. We'll never completely erase the memory of what happened to you. And be grateful for that, because that's part of your soul's architecture. That's part of who you are. And so there's different periods of time where those imprints can trigger different kinds of reactions in us. And that's beautiful. But healing means that in the end, you are the owner of your own energy. You get to decide how you're going to create a frequency of energy and where you're going to put that frequency of energy. And the other thing to always remember is there's no wrong frequency of energy. Right. It's just a spectrum of energy, and all of them are perfect in certain situations and at certain times. So don't think that you're always going to react the same way, and don't expect yourself always to. That's the analytical mind getting in there again. You might say, oh, this first time that imprint was triggered and I realized it and I was able to take control of it, I changed my behavior to a very friendly way. And I was very nice and inviting to the person. And now it got triggered this time, and I was very matter of fact with them. I didn't show a lot of compassionate emotion. And just understand that there's times that you're not supposed to show a huge amount of compassion. There's times that you're supposed to be more matter of fact. In that situation, maybe it needed, with the person you're responding to, they needed more matter of fact, just cut and dry. Some of us are like that. We like things just spelled out for us.
Yeah. And I've noticed that there's been times where I might be in an interaction with one of my kids, and I feel that, and I consciously choose potency. Yeah. And it's okay. And I can't explain it exactly, but it's a very different experience when you're in that space and there is an element of, yes, I'm choosing this and that's okay, versus doing it and then going, oh my gosh, I was such a jerk. And
or not even remembering exactly what.
Or not remembering. Fortunately, I think I remember most of mine nowadays. But Emerald Raven was saying that I never thought about it until this video, but I have reactions based on doing something similar to my parents, but not in the best way, and that they're very much a cut and dry person. And it's all about bringing more consciousness to the unconscious and just staying as that witness and observer more and more and more, so you can have more conscious authority and choice in what you're choosing.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful experience when
Yeah.
that starts to really click for you. You suddenly realize you have a choice. Where before that you don't think you have a choice. You think almost that you're a victim of circumstance. But once it starts clicking for you, you start to realize, wait, I have a choice. And it may not just be one or two choices. Suddenly, at sometimes you might be able to be so cognizant that you see 15 choices in front of you. And of course, that might be too many, and you can't even look at them all in time to react. So, yeah, so it's very beautiful when that starts to actually happen for you, when you start to actually get to that point and to just understand that that is huge in spiritual development. That is probably the biggest jump, is that experience of suddenly being able to be conscious all the time of your decisions, and to give yourself a slack when you decide to do something that you maybe a part of you is like, I don't want to do that. I don't like doing that action, but you have consciously decided it. And that's so different than unconsciously reacting to something.
Yeah, I recall one time, and this was probably the most aware I've ever been to it. I went to Anya and said, I'm about to do this thing, and it's going to start a fight, and I'm consciously choosing it. I just want you to be aware before you hear the repercussions of it. And then I went and chose what I was going to choose, and it was a mind blowing experience. It's not something I'm looking to choose frequently, but it was cool to be able to choose that in complete consciousness, and then even to the moment where what the desire, I don't even know why I was doing it, but there came a time in this interaction that all of a sudden, like, there was an awareness from the other person, and as soon as that awareness occurred, the energy shifted and I was out of it. And
Yeah,
I was like, wow, that was some crazy intense illuminating stuff.
absolutely.
Um, let's see. Oh, Emerald Raven. I don't know who you are, Emerald Raven. Not that who you are in the program, that you're looking forward to embarking on this journey tomorrow. I'm looking forward to meeting you too. I
Yeah,
wonder, is
absolutely.
this, who is it? I don't know.
And for
Oh,
everyone
oh, Richie. You were talking on Facebook before. I would never have guessed that you jumped ship and went over to Twitch. Okay.
yeah, so it's, I forgot what I was going to say. It doesn't matter.
No, any final thing? Like, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm so excited. I guess in final, and as we conclude here, if you've been watching and you're watching this on the replay and you missed the apprenticeship, please still follow the link whenever I have anything that Zane's doing that I'm helping to promote or whatnot. I will put it on the same page. So if you're watching on a replay, you can still follow the link, find out about upcoming programs or to get more information about Zane. And if you're catching this and there's nothing that's convenient for you, reach out and see what we might be able to create. Like
Yeah,
Zane
because
said, we love
this is
to.
a lovely a labor of love. Sorry to cut you off there.
Oh no, it is a labor of love, because the work is more important than anything else. Like Zane's talked in past streams, he's paid to teach before, where he's paid more out of pocket for the space and everything, and didn't actually walk away with much, or if anything. And it's really
Yeah.
about getting the information out there, and the money is a secondary gain sometimes.
Yeah, I think there was about 2 years straight that during my teachings that I just broke even everywhere. That's all it was. I mean, that was better than when I was paying, on my side. But there was like a 2 year period where all I did was kind of break even, and everything just stayed. I had enough all the time to survive and to continue going and doing my teachings, and that was beautiful at that moment. We're always looking for more and more abundance, of course, but that's part of the illusion that there isn't already abundance all around us.
Right. But really, I have found it's my capacity to receive that's been the biggest thing I had to work on, that there's plenty there for the universe to gift me. All I have to do is decide that I am willing to receive it, and then everything can shift on a dime. And we've talked about it before, but I love Bashar's definition of abundance, the ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it. And if
Yeah,
it's something that's not happening, then really question, is it something I really needed? And
yeah,
where am I maybe
absolutely.
not in alignment? So
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
amazing conversation, brother. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to see you tomorrow
yeah.
to
Just
embark on our next
tomorrow.
journey. All
Yeah,
right, guys.
absolutely.
But we'll catch you next time. And a Nike Kawaii, thank you. We love you. And we'll see you next time.